All right, get this all set up here. Welcome everybody. My name is Nick Klosky and I am the co-founder of Honeypoint 3D, and I'd like to welcome you to the December 2017 monthly 3D printing and 3D design webinar. As kind of happens every month, we always have problems with our webinar software, and we kind of have changed to different ones. So this one is a new one for us this month, which actually ties into our CRM and all of that. So hopefully this works, and hopefully the recording that I'm doing right now is viewable by everybody after the fact. Just as a little kind of tip on how to use this, on the left-hand side, there should be a little kind of button with 3 dots in it and a kind of little call out bubble. If you click on that, that's the chat function, and you can ask me any questions on what I'm going over in there, or ask questions that you would like to have answered, and I would be happy to go over them. So I didn't receive any emails this week or this month on things to go over, so I want to share a cool workflow that I did using a little bit of 3D scanning and Fusion 360, so you kind of get both of Meshmixer and Fusion in this demo, but then I will for sure come back and look at any of your questions on the left-hand side, you know, if you come up with any. So I don't see any questions to start off with. What I will want to do now, let me share my screen here, like that. All right. Actually, I can move this over here so I can still see your questions. Awesome. I just posted this morning, let me bring up this over here, this onto Thingiverse. So let me move my screen a little bit. There we go. I posted this morning. This is on Thingiverse.com, and it's thing number 2711606. It's a really cool sort of wall mount that I got for, you actually can't see my video. Let me see if I can kind of bring this over here so you can kind of see me in the lower quadrant right here. I got a Windows mixed reality VR headset, and it came with these nice controllers. This is the right-handed controller, kind of sits in your right hand like this, has kind of a light bar. If I turn it on here, you'll be able to see the kind of lights pop up. And it is a really cool little device with you can kind of see maybe a little joystick right here, and touchpad and trigger and all of that. This is great, and it actually sits, let me turn it off here, it sits fine on a desk, but I don't want it to just be on my desk for my 4-year-old to kind of knock off, or me to knock off. So what I want to do is I want to put this in a wall mount, and I actually printed one, and I'm going to show you how to actually do this yourself. So this is a 3D printed wall mount. It has some holes in it just to save on printing time. The strength is still totally there. And kind of see that there are screw holes in it, and this kind of mounts onto the wall, I guess kind of like that. And then this guy goes in here, facing the wall, like that. So it fits in a little tiny bit loose, but that's okay because I kind of want that, and the kind of cable just kind of hangs down here. And the nice thing is that when this fits, if I get it just perpendicular, you can kind of see right here that it does not hit, if I, that way, there you go. It does not hit the edge of the wall, so it kind of will go on there. I put those down and move this aside, you should be able to see this. So there's some images of the wall mount, kind of in use with it in there. And there's even an image of what it looks like inside of Fusion. I want to show you how you can do this yourself. The really nice thing is that all of the files that created this are on Thingiverse, even the 3D scan. So if you look you can kind of see right here that this is a 3D scan I did using my very nice 3D scanner of the motion controller, so you can create your own objects. And again, this is Thingiverse.com thing 2711606, or you can just do a search for Windows Mixed Reality Controller Wall Mount. What you'll get with that is, let me go up here. I really thought that I got that, but I guess I didn't, so let me download that again. Oh, I think it's actually in downloads here. No, it's not in downloads. All right, so let me just save this out as an STL. Okay, so what I started off with right here, once this, or maybe I do have to have it. Okay, I apologize. Let me save this out here, and that should do it. There we go. Okay, so what the 3D scan was, and this is how we get a lot of projects starting, is you get some sort of base geometry. This is a 3D scan of the controller. You can see here in Meshmixer, it's really not that good of a scan. I would not be doing this if somebody hired me to scan this because the inside of this kind of bar, this ring inside of here is not recorded. But I don't really need that. What I needed was just the handle of this, as you can see right here. That's all I need, because that's all that I really cared about. And I got a pretty good scan here. I did some smoothing of some kind of messed up pieces, but it shows the side button here and the main button. This is great. So what I did, and this is kind of what the end device looked like, and I'll go through this fast. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but this is what the end process looked like. I'm going to move this over here. The way that you would start doing this, and this is really the way that you would start using any sort of scan, is you would go to Insert, Insert Mesh, choose your mesh like this, and then after a second, I'm going to move to the ground and center it. It should already be centered. Great. And then we look up our origin, you can see that it's pretty well centered. But I'm actually going to move this up above the origin because it just kind of makes it easier. I don't know, something like that. What we want to do is we want to start with creating the base. So you can do this a couple of ways. You can make a mechanical shape. That's not how I did this. I actually went into the Create Form. And so we're in Create Form. I'm creating a box down here. And I'm just going to create kind of something that is the vague shape that I want. So kind of a box here. Not a very good wall mount yet, but we will get there. I would use select or probably turn symmetry on for right now to make this symmetric on both sides, and then start moving these sides using the edit form. Just to do this a little bit slower, I'm holding down Shift, selecting these 4 panels like that. I'm right-clicking and go Edit Form. That allows me to kind of move this out a little bit. Now I can see that this controller is fully inside of it, but it's also not long enough because it would hit the wall if it were mounted there. So I'm going to select these 4, and I can draw this out like this, but I start to get some elongation. I can hold down the Alt key, and that is going to extrude another kind of set of things. New kind of line around here. So that's kind of nice. That is, if I were to mount this on the wall, it would not interfere. I can select these edges like this around and go back into Edit Form and use the Scale command. And actually, I don't want to necessarily scale that in all dimensions because it'll get too big down here. So I'm going to scale these to the left. I could maybe move it a little bit up, scale it to the right, and it looks pretty good, right? And you could tweak a lot with this, right, to get this going a lot better. But let me go here. I'm going to go and modify and say crease, and since I already had those edges selected, it's going to crease those edges. So now they are flat on the wall. And I'm going to edit form. I'm going to maybe move that in a little bit. It's too close to the wall, something like that. So this is a very, very bare bones sort of shape. But I'm going to say finish form. And now I should be able to do, so this was kind of one of the issues, is that this is not completely flat. It looks flat because it's creased, but it's still kind of considered a round shape. So what I'm going to do is create a construction plane somewhere out here, like that, and then do a sketch on that construction plane. But you'll kind of see why later. And this is also one of the issues. I didn't start this right in the center, but I'm going to I'm going to do this fast just for the webinar. I'm going to make my best guess as to where the centers of these lines are. And I'm going to hit X to turn those into construction. So I'm going to kind of guess that that is my center line. I'm going to sketch a circle, maybe right over here, and then sketch a mirror of this circle across this mirror line. And then I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to mirror this and this across that mirror line. Awesome. Now we have those kind of 4 circles floating out there, and I can go in and select each one of the centers of those circles and extrude them out. They are extruding as objects until they hit something, and now they become cutting tools. Now we have some holes. And those holes aren't entirely nice for screws, so we can go in and say modify and fillet. No, actually modify and chamfer. Chamfer 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to chamfer these, which makes it a little bit nicer for screws to go in. And this is not at all, and this actually isn't the best chamfer. We should probably cut this off flat, otherwise the screws might go in sideways, but you kind of get my idea with this. So now we have let me stop sharing for a moment and go back to my video. I apologize, I think you can only see me kind of in the corner here, but hopefully that's good enough. Now we have the holder for it, but we need to cut out the actual hole for the object. So here's kind of some cool tricks for that. So let me share my screen here. All right, we're back here. We can get rid of this holder for a second. What we essentially need to do is be able to cut this handle out of the other device. And the way that we can do that is pretty cool. I'm going to go in and create a form again, and I am going to create a box. And this time I'm going to kind of create it on this plane right at the bottom of the handle so that it extends past the outside of the object, the handle. So that pretty much did it. I can select this whole thing and move it. I think I was a little bit off, so something right around there. That's great. And then I am going to select these 4 top faces and right click and say edit form. I'm going to bring them up a little bit like this, and then maybe hit Alt, extrude it up. I think that's pretty good. Alt again. All right, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to select all of maybe these up here because this is where it starts to not match. And I'm going to move this out and maybe scale this up a little bit. And that's pretty good. I can even double click on this edge right here and scale that up a little bit. And I think that's pretty good. It's actually not. I guess I scaled it in one direction and not the other, but that's all right. I can go and select just these edges right here and edit form, kind of move them in. And same thing with these edges. Actually, these right there. And move them in a little bit. So that's good. What I'm actually going to do is on the top, and here's actually a cool thing, is I keep selecting this scan, right click and say unselectable. So now I will not ever be able to select that. So that makes it a lot easier. I'm going to actually delete that top part because I want to make sure that I see where the top is. I'm going to scale this up, kind of all dimensions like that. So now here's a very, very cool tool for things that are kind of cylindrical, is we can use the modify pull command and pull all of these like that onto the object. And for cylindrical shapes, that works really, really well. We click OK with that and we get rid of the mesh body, and we see that we have something that pretty well mimics that shape. I'm going to say finish form. It's not a full body, just because I didn't want to pull on the center objects inside of here, so I just got rid and made a hole in the top. I can go into the patch environment, click patch, right there, like that. Now these two are separate bodies, as you can see here, and then stitch this guy to that guy. Now we have a full body. If we turn on our other body, we have something that can be Booleaned. We go back up to model, to modify and combine. So combining is combining or cutting, all of that. And then you say, this is my target body up here, target. This is my tool body, operation cut. And what that did was cut that shape out of that one. Now that is a perfect representation of the handle, which isn't probably the best. So what I would probably want to go back to is go back and once I have all of this, select the entire thing, say edit form, select the kind of central one right here, and see where it says unified scale 1. I'm going to make it maybe 1.05. What that did is it made it 5% bigger. And then we go out and, it kind of parametrically updates. So now this is 5% bigger. This is still not very nice. So I can go in and fillet it like that. Can't do too much of a fillet. Let's say I can do more than maybe 4 millimeters. Nope, 3, 2. A 2 millimeter fillet. Sometimes it works at a small number and then fails and then really works at a big number. So somewhere right in there, 13 didn't work. Yeah, it doesn't really work when it's larger. So one way to kind of get around that, which I did in the other model, was I created another sketch at a parallel plane like this, and I just maybe did something like a spline where I cut down on the side and up and then finished it off with a line. So something like that. So I kind of created this shape here, and I can extrude this out and cut it. So I can extrude that way and symmetric and cut. So now that's kind of an interesting shape. I think I didn't do that entirely correctly, but now I should be able to more easily fillet, so that's a 5 millimeter fillet there. and then I can maybe fill it the inside as well, maybe also at 5. Yeah, and that saves a little bit on the printing time. And if I bring in the mesh body again, that's what it would look like when it goes in. It would still kind of cup it in there a little bit. The one that I did before is a lot better, but kind of gives you a good idea. Let me stop sharing and go back. You can kind of see me in the lower corner there. So that gives you, let me turn on the light, see a little bit better. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea on how to use meshes, how to use maybe some parametric modeling in the sculpt environment in order to use those meshes in kind of cool ways. And if anybody has any questions on that or anything else, please use the little bubble with 3 dots on it, the little chat button on the left, and you can type in any of your questions. But I do get quite a bit of questions per month when people do submit them about how to use meshes in Fusion 360. And that was a way of just kind of creating a surface, not necessarily over the entire model, because I just didn't need it, just where you need it, and using the pull command to get it really, really accurate. And that worked, as you can see in the 3D model that I created. Again, ask anybody to submit your questions if you have any. Wanted to also go over maybe, so if nobody has any questions, let me share my screen again with people. Like that. I actually should be able to keep my video going right there while I'm doing the screen share. You know, this is a decent scan. If we look at the wireframe, you can kind of see where I did some manual fixing. You can see that the mesh density is a little bit less here, where I did some manual fixing of the scan. And, you know, for something like this, it's very difficult to fix this in post-processing because you would need to be able to create kind of a bottom area of this to connect to the top. But that was the other thing that I wanted to talk about in today's webinar is how to kind of clean up scans or clean up any sort of model that you're working with that might have rough edges. There's some just very easy tips for that. In Meshmixer, I just click the S or hit the S key for select. I'm going to make my brush smaller like this. And I'm going to say view and show boundaries. This blue boundary is not very conducive to doing anything with. So what I'm going to do is double click on it. That selects the boundary. I'm going to click O to optimize that selection, and then the B key. B is in boundary. And what that does is it creates, and I press enter, it creates a nicer boundary. If you kind of see the crunchiness that was there is now gone, but it's still not very nice at all. So here's a little trick that you can use to clean up these boundaries if you don't mind getting rid of a little bit of geometry. When you did that select and optimize and B command, it did smooth out your boundary a little bit, but now you see that it is still selected where it did the smoothing. If you press the delete key, you now get a lot nicer boundary edge to do things with. It's still not totally nice, but it is a lot nicer than it was before. Now, if you want to smooth this out, here's a really cool technique you can do. If you go into Sculpt, and really use any of these brushes, but smoothing, robust smooth is probably a good one. And you turn, go down here to refinement, make sure the refinement is turned on. You can turn smooth down, you can turn reduce down if you want, as long as refine is turned up. So what you see as I click on this, let me zoom in a little bit here, like this, is that as I click on this, it's actually based on the size of the brush, smoothing out those areas and kind of normalizing them. If my brush is bigger, then it will work over a bigger area. But you see, it's not really getting rid of any information. It's actually adding information, but it's adding it based on the rest of where that circle is. So the edge is essentially being extended down based on where all of the rest of the mesh is. And you can go around and pretty efficiently and quickly smooth up, I'm pressing the C key to recenter, smooth these boundaries where you might need to. You don't really need to smooth it much up here. That looks all okay. It actually did a pretty good job. Now the last way that I would maybe suggest on how to fix this is that this, I mean, you'd want to fix it in the scan, right? But if you really needed to fix this, what you need to do is you need to get a surface down here that is similar to the surface over here, that essentially comes in a few millimeters and then goes up. You can do that manually. One other way that I thought about doing this is a very cool tool that I don't think gets enough focus on. It's called the Fit Primitive tool. If I hit the select key and select this area like this, and then go up to Edit and say Fit Primitive. It's also the P key, P for primitive. It will match a primitive to that selection area. Now I don't really need a square. What I could try to do is a cylinder. So the cylinder goes here. I can try to rotate the cylinder. I probably want to say create new objects. That's fine. What I want to try to do is, it's actually going very kind of crazy right now, is match the cylinder, or actually a different way of doing this. Let's try to do this in a more intelligent way. So make a selection right here. Make a selection right here. So I have two selections, and let's see what this does with Fit Primitive. And I want to create a single primitive, if you see up here, for a cylinder. So what that's going to do is that's going to try to do a couple different things. Let's try to rotate this around. Try to rotate it a different way. And actually, that's not actually that bad. So what that does is that puts a cylinder, let me go right over here, like this, a cylinder with walls that are kind of in the right place based on the diameter of those two things. Almost. I'm going to click accept, see if we can work with this. I'm not sure if we can. But now we have a Fit Primitive object, a new object down here, and I can hit the T key to transform it and do some rotation. So I can do some rotation of this, some rotation up to get it right perfect, and then kind of move it over. And the really critical thing about this is that this should be a similar diameter to where I did the selection. What I can do is go in and say select on this. I don't have to be too accurate right here. And then invert the selection. So what I'm going to do is kind of delete that. And I don't need that face, and I don't need that face. I'm going to delete that. And now we have kind of a nice little shield right here. I'm going to hit the T key to transform it, move it down, and it's not bad. A little bit of a rotation right here. I could certainly move it over here and try to match it to this side, but that's all right. I'm going to hit Control A to select the whole thing, and then modify to, or maybe edit to flip normals. There we go, so that the inside surface is facing this way. If you notice, there's very no density at all. I'm going to hit Control A to select it, and I'm going to go Edit to Remesh. And under that, go to Linear Subdivision, and subdivide it once, do it again, Edit to Remesh, Linear Subdivision. That's great. Accept that, and then do it again to remesh, and now maybe adaptive density, and do something really dense one more time. That's pretty cool. Great, so I have these two things. I'm going to select both of these in the object browser and go to Combine to move them into the same object. and just eyeball it here. I'm going to kind of delete this information down like that and delete it. I kind of left some things there, so let me, sometimes this happens with the linear subdivision, so I'm not sure if this is going to work. But I'm going to select right here, and go edit to bridge and accept that. So now we have a bridge over, and then we can do that same technique I used before with the brushes, robust, smooth with refinement. Make my brush a little bit bigger here and start kind of zippering this up. I mean, there's, and this time I do want to have reduce turned on, because you can see without reduction, it makes this very kind of crunchy. But with reduction, it works great. Now this is probably way too thick. I didn't align it properly, but this is a webinar, and like that, and zip up those. And we have some artifacts here. All of that can be dealt with later. You know, you can just kind of select where that comes off. It may be deleted. I'm not. Yeah, so that's floating. Now we go here and maybe just select this. Now that's floating, and we can go and isolate those things later and delete them. And, well, let me just do that. Select that guy, expand, delete. There we go. And I didn't totally get it, but you kind of can see what I'm talking about. Anyway, but now we have, zoom out here, kind of a nice little interior surface that I could use, and then I would do the same thing with connecting this on the bottom. And, you know, I would go out around my merry way, doing what I needed to do. And there would be other ways, if anybody on replay asks this, to kind of bend this. So you can go to select an area. Actually, I do get questions on this. Select an area. Actually, I don't want back faces. Let me do this properly. Then go to deform and maybe soft transform with a little bit of a fall off. And you can refine the mesh like that. And that's actually okay, right? So I'm kind of getting this more in the center. Again, that edge is causing me a little bit of issues. But just to kind of show you that you can do things inside of Meshmixer which look horrible. Excuse me, that look like really bad, like this, where you might not want this divot, but then you can go and fix them, right? You go in with a sculpting tool like Robust Smooth, and you know, all of that can very, very quickly be kind of averaged out. And then you would go and maybe do this again. Another way to do it, maybe with something like this and modify or deform and warp. I'm not entirely sure if this is going to work. Yeah, maybe. You can only warp that selection, but you know, that kind of brought one part down, and you would just kind of match it up with here and then connect it. So let me go back here. I didn't receive any questions on the little comment bubble there, so hopefully I was at least a little bit thorough in my description on Meshmixer for that. But we get a lot of people that need to connect things and move things, and it's not really that hard inside of Meshmixer if you understand that mess-ups in Meshmixer are very easy to fix. It's essentially like digital clay, and with clay, you kind of have things go on with it, and you can fix things very easily with clay. Same thing in Meshmixer. I get a lot of people that are very kind of hung up on trying to get things exactly accurate and all of that right when they want to do it and not accurate later. And Meshmixer is very good for kind of getting there and then doing it and then making it accurate later on. So that's just something to remember about Meshmixer. Well, if nobody has any comments, I think that we'll end the webinar today. This is the last few seconds to ask me any questions on the little comment bubble with the 3 dots on the left-hand side, if anybody has any questions. I'm also available at nick@honeypoint3d.com if you want to ask me any questions about 3D CAD modeling or design. If it's an easy question, I'll answer it. If it's a harder question, we'll talk about how to get that answered. But otherwise, I really thank everybody for joining today, and have a great December, and I'll talk to you again in January. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.